Amidst Israel's annexation plans, occupied Jerusalem al-Quds is the focal point. Israel has carried out mass arrests there, and in many recent cases it is shooting to kill Palestinians. The Palestinians say this is just part of a wider campaign to ethnically cleanse al-Quds, Palestine's capital, from its indigenous population. These worshippers are happily flocking to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, reopened again after health restrictions following the coronavirus outbreak forced its closure for the first time in 50 years. But there isn't much else to be happy about in occupied Jerusalem al-Quds. Life has never been easy for the Palestinians in the Holy City. However, observers say these days the Israeli regime enjoys the backing of Washington under the current US administration like no other time in history. Under its plans to annex more Palestinian land, including Jerusalem al-Quds, Tel Aviv is increasing its hostilities there. In a move to silence dissent in the occupied territories, the Palestinian Liberation Organization says Israel is increasing violations against Palestinian officials. This has included a campaign of intimidation and arrests. Among those detained has been the Secretary General of the National People's Congress of Jerusalem al-Quds, Major General Bilal al-Natsha, storming and searching homes and handing over their residence for questioning under the Shin Bet spy agency. Protests have been increasing in the occupied territories in opposition to Israel's annexation plans, including occupied Jerusalem al-Quds, which Palestinians consider the capital of Palestine.
يوم نفير عام في كل محافظات الوطن رفضا لصفقة الضم الذي أعلنها نتنياهو، أيضا رفضا لصفقة ترامب الذي أعلنها صفقة القرن. هو يوم نفير عام في كل محافظات الوطن لإيصال رسالة إلى كل العالم على رأسها إسرائيل بأن هذا الشعب لن يقبل بأي حل أقل من دولة فلسطينية على أراضي 67 بعاصمتها القدس.
في مواجهة قرار الضم الإسرائيلي، هذا القرار الذي ينسف المشروع الوطني الفلسطيني. اليوم جماهير شعبنا قوانا الوطنية تعلن أنها لن تسمح بقرار الضم أن يمر مرور الكرام، لن يصبح الضم أمر واقع.
الفلسطيني هو يحتل الأرض الفلسطينية، لكنه يمعن في إجراءاته التوسعية والضم لقتل الحلم الفلسطيني. هو واهم إن ظن أنه يستطيع أن يحول دون قيام الدولة الفلسطينية، لأن شعبنا الفلسطيني ومنظمة التحرير الفلسطينية ستفشل كل هذه الإجراءات، وستكون للعدو الصهيوني وللعالم أجمع أن هذه إجراءات احتلالية باطلة لا قيمة لها.
Experts say Tel Aviv has a narrow window of opportunity to move ahead with the annexation before the US presidential election in November that could see one of its strongest allies, President Donald Trump, voted out of office and potentially delay or disrupt the regime's plans. Occupied al-Quds is being talked about on social media. Here's the latest on Twitter, starting with Kurt Carlson, who says, what if there had been Palestinians tearing down Jewish family homes? By then it would surely have been the Third World War. Osama Siddiq says, is this not terrorism? If this was done by a Muslim state, the whole world would have gone berserk. East Timor, which was Catholic, the UN with lightning speed held a referendum, gave independence. If it was a Muslim majority, it would have been another Palestine or a Kashmir, he says. Mo Africa says all of them are thugs, whether in uniform, civilian or church's clothes. Their racist attitude and disregard for Palestinians is sickening, always motivated by hatred, is one point of view. Faisal says all Israelis are in the army, so they aren't really masquerading. They actually are soldiers. They actually are soldiers. They all have to serve in the army. Dorothy Dent says Israeli treatment of Palestinians amounts to war crimes, and indeed it does. That's being investigated in The Hague as we speak. Finally, from Vimela Nolis, who says that's why Zionists are the new Nazis and Israel is the new Third Reich. No amount of hollering of anti-Semitism will erase the guilty facts. Any blind loyalty to Jewish spiritual homeland only deepens Jewish shame. On that very strong point, we're going to the occupied West Bank, where the Palestine Files team spoke to the Palestinians on the fate of Jerusalem al-Quds.
والله المجتمع الدولي الكتملي في الكورونا، وبعدين يعني أنا بوجه رسالتي للمسلمين في أنحاء العالم. هو الأقصى باكي للفلسطينية، هو الأقصى من سورة الإسراء. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله. هذا الأقصى لجميع المسلمين مش إلنا، هذا جميع الأقصى. لازم إن جميع المسلمين ينتبهوا للنقطة، ما يظلوش نايمين مش سائلين على أقصى ولا عن غير أقصى.
مش بس للقدس، وفي كل بلادنا في فلسطين كليا معنيين بإخراج الأهل من كل فلسطين، والقدس درجة أولى لأنها مكانة القدس بالنسبة للمسلمين وللناس مكانة مقدسة وعالمية للعالم، فمعنيين على أساس أنه القدس تتفرغ من كل شيء اسمه فلسطيني أو عربي.
طبعا في القدس الناس في القدس وأهلنا في القدس بواجهوا كثير صعوبات، تحديات، أهمها أو التحدي الأساسي هو الاحتلال اللي بفرض هيمنته على القدس، بتحدى في الناس والناس بتتحدى فيه، بيحاول الاحتلال انه يطمس الهوية العربية اللي موجودة في القدس، ولكن احنا شعب فلسطيني صعب او مش راح نقبل بسهولة انه هويتنا تنطمس بهاي السهولة.
التطهير العرقي مش من اليوم، التطهير العرقي من وقت طويل، لكن حسب الأوضاع السياسية اللي بتصير في البلد
تأثر على نفسية كطلاب المجتمع، طلاب مدارس، أولاد صغار، أطفال، نسوان، يعني مش حلو برضه يدخل عليك في نص الليل يجي ينتشك قدام أمك ولا قدام أختك برضه.
Here's a brief summary of what's happening on the ground. According to the Executive Committee of the Palestine Liberation Organization, Israel is violating basic rights of civilians and officials. There is an increase in the ongoing campaign of arrests. Home raids have also picked up, with civilians being the main target. When arrested, these civilians undergo inhuman treatment by the Shin Bet, the notorious internal intelligence agency. That same entity has been accused of crimes against humanity by the Palestinians for its mistreatment of them. Here are the reports that made the headlines regarding this issue. Ali Hassan is the co-director at the Canadian Defenders for Human Rights, and she joins us now. Ms. Hassan, welcome to the show. We're hearing of constant arrests in occupied Jerusalem al-Quds lately, and the PLO has accused Israel of ethnic cleansing in the city. What's your views?
There is absolutely zero doubt that Israel has been committing an ethnic cleansing campaign against the indigenous Palestinians for over 7 decades now. Since 1948, they have used brutal force to remove the civilian population. The forcible removal and displacement of over 750,000 Palestinians during the Nakba in order to create the Zionist entity was only the beginning of the ethnic cleansing campaign. Even today, their continued policy of building illegal settlements, pushing Palestinians off their land to make way for more Zionist settlers, is further proof of this ethnic cleansing. And they continue to deny Palestinians a right to return to their land, a right that is granted to them under international law, specifically UN Resolution 194. This is in violation of international law. So it is very clear that Israel is committing ethnic cleansing against the Palestinian people.
Israeli forces are also handing over Palestinians to the notorious Shin Bet agency. Why are they doing this?
Israeli policy of silencing dissent is nothing new, but they have been preparing for unrest with the looming annexation of the West Bank that is promised next month. There is a fear of an uprising. They know that there is a potential outbreak of violence in both the West Bank and Gaza, and they know that there may be mass protests, major riots, and even a full-blown third intifada. Even President Mahmoud Abbas announced security forces were cutting ties with Israeli military. Even though there may be some degree of coordination still, it is to a lesser extent. So Israel has been making military preparations for months, including special training, preparing equipment and weapons, and tightening the military's coordination with the Shin Bet and the Israeli police. Basically, they know that their actions are going to have serious repercussions on the security and stability of the region. So that what they are doing is silencing politically active people before they can encourage an uprising.
Okay. Is there a shadow takeover of Jerusalem al-Quds before Israel's planned annexation?
Both Israel and the United States have been preparing us for quite some time for the takeover of al-Quds. They moved the U.S. Embassy to East Jerusalem in violation of international law, because East Jerusalem is internationally recognized as illegally occupied Palestinian territory. They claim Jerusalem is the undisputed capital of Israel and the deal of the century, which we like to call the steal of the century, since Israelis continue to gain more and more land and Palestinians continue to lose more land and more of their human rights. And we've been watching while the world has been distracted with the COVID-19 pandemic, Israel exploiting the opportunity to take unilateral action at a record pace. They've been preparing the area militarily, security-wise, colonially, and administratively so that parts of it could be annexed while conditions allowed. They have been preparing the world for quite some time, and the world just seems to sit back and watch.
Alia Hassan, co-director at the Canadian Defenders for Human Rights. Thank you for joining Palestine Files. We're going to take a short break, but stay seated where you are because we'll be right back with the second half of the show. No Palestinian is safe in occupied Jerusalem al-Quds, not even 32-year-old Iyad Halak. Despite suffering from autism and having the mental age of an 80-year-old, Israeli occupation forces shot him dead as he was walking alongside his carer to the special needs school he visits every day, the same path he has taken for many years.
3 جنود اجوا من هون و3 جنود اجوا من هون. هلا ما الخوف تبعته ارفص وتخبى. المعلمة تبعته اللي قريبة على المركز الشرطة طلعت قالت لهم هذا ولد معاق هذا ولد معاق وهاي هويته.
The public execution has left his family searching for answers and has ignited widespread grief, anger and outrage in occupied al-Quds.
يعني عندهم النية انه بدهم يقتلوه ومحتمل كمان مبينة انه بيستنوا هالولد. هلا الولد هذا يعني تقول ماشي بالطريق اي واحد بيعرف انه هذا يعني في هذا ولد بيمشي هيك بحاله ما فيش يعني انت اي واحد بمر بالطريق بشوف انه هذا ولد معاق يعني.
The mother of the deceased was seen confronting Israeli forces at the murder scene before she collapsed and was carried away to a nearby vehicle.
بس انا باستمرار قلبي عليه كنت يعني أبقى أتصل. هو الوحيد يمكن اللي بالمؤسسة فيش إمكانه تزعج المؤسسة قد ما أتصل أطمئن عليه. الله أكبر.
Thousands of mourners massed for the disabled man's funeral. According to his family, Iyad was an enthusiastic amateur gardener and adored his school.
احنا بدنا نوقف انه ما يصيرش كمان مرة مع ولد غير ابني. هذا اللي احنا اللي بدنا اياه. هذا كل اللي بطلبنا واللي قتله يتحاكم.
His plight, however, is not an isolated incident. Israeli forces use the shoot-to-kill policy on a vast number of unarmed, innocent Palestinians. Hawaida Araf is a Palestinian-American activist, lawyer and co-founder of the International Solidarity Movement, a Palestinian-led organization focused on assisting the Palestinian side of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict using non-violent protests. Ms. Araf, I want to ask you about the regime transferring Palestinians to the Shin Bet agency.
Well, the Israeli Shin Bet is notorious for torture. Even though in 1999 the Israeli Supreme Court supposedly officially outlawed or banned torture, the Israeli police and military and intelligence services never really stopped using it. And recently, Israeli human rights organizations have noted that the use of torture is more on the rise. And therefore, while I can't give you an official reason, I would say that in order to be able to use these practices, they're going to turn people over to their apparatus that is most notorious for its use of torture.
In the face of more annexation, including occupied Jerusalem, al-Quds, will Tel Aviv be held accountable for its ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people?
Well, ethnic cleansing is not yet a separate crime under international law. That said, it hasn't been officially defined. However, a committee of experts looking into the crimes committed in the former Yugoslavia described it as, quote, rendering an area ethnically homogeneous by using force of intimidation to remove persons of given groups from the area. Now, also having said that it's not a separate crime, there are crimes that are essentially similar to ethnic cleansing that are identified in international law, and this is forced population transfer. Forced population transfer is a crime against humanity under Article 7 of the Rome Statute that established the International Criminal Court, and it is also, when done by an occupying power, as Israel is, a war crime under Article 8 of the Rome Statute. And it has long been recognized under the Fourth Geneva Convention, Article 49, as a war crime. Why no one is doing anything about it? Because the enforcement of international law takes political will, and thus far the international community has not had the will to hold Israel responsible. That said, Palestinians have now taken their case to the International Criminal Court, and we do hope to see movement there.
On that point, at this level of time, in terms of action, what can we expect from the international community before Palestinians start taking matters, into their own hands as stipulated by law?
Well, if you mean what can be expected in terms of Israel's upcoming plans to annex large parts of the occupied West Bank,
the annexation.
Sadly, I'm not expecting very much, but it's from the international community of states, just because for so long they have proven themselves impotent and unwilling to take action. We have seen strong statements come out recently, but that's all they've seemed to be, is statements, and I think Israel knows that and will crumble up those statements and throw them in the waste bin. If it's not followed up by concrete actions to sanction Israel, Israel will continue doing what it wants. Now, when we look at international community, if we're talking international civil society, there is a lot of hope there, because around the world solidarity is being built and connections are being built, and people are seeing and recognizing what's happening on the ground. Even the strong solidarity that's happening with what we see in the United States and around the world, recognizing the dangers of white supremacy and how we begin to dismantle that for justice for all people. So I expect that to grow. I expect the international boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement to grow. And if countries are not going to hold Israel accountable, then international civil society will. So in that sense, I am hopeful. And I should add, Palestinians taking matters into their own hands, that will be regardless of what the international community does, because Palestinians are at the forefront of this, and it's the Palestinian struggle with the solidarity and support of international civil society around the world. So it's not either or, it is together for freedom and liberation.
Hawaii Araf, co-founder of the International Solidarity Movement, thank you very much for your contribution to Palestine Files. Our team sat down with Dr. Sabri Saidam from the Palestinian Authority's Fatah Party's Central Committee to get his views on these issues. Here he is.
It's definite that Israel is going ahead with annexation. Any talk against this notion is a waste of time. It's adamant, Israel is adamant to see an end to this, so that Netanyahu portrays himself as the hero of Israel rather than the person who's been indicted to go to prison. So besides heroism, there's the American support and there's the so-called plan of the century that is lubricating such a process of annexing Palestinian territory. It's obvious that Israel is giving the indication that it has started the annexation process. It is using the time whilst the world is busy with Corona and now busy with what's happening in America to intensify its attacks against Palestinians as an act of deterrence, so that Palestinians reconsider their wish to confront Israeli soldiers and Israeli military. Now that Israel has planned to implement, it is planning to, besides that, to deter Palestinians and scare them so that they are not in any way morally equipped to confront Israel. Anybody who talks against ethnic cleansing vis-a-vis what Israel is doing is just wasting time. Israel is not only ethically cleansing Palestinians, it's clearing the territory, stretching from the western side of the West Bank, where the concentration of settlements are, reaching out to the Jordan Valley, and not forgetting that the plan of Israel, the ultimate goal of Israel, is still written at the gates of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, whereby Israel intends to stretch its rule from the Euphrates to the Nile. It is a policy that's been ongoing, supported by the silence of the international community to take action. If action was taken a long time ago, Israel would not have been able to do what it is doing. It is benefiting from the existing scene, and it is now building upon the support of the American administration that is going with the new Zionists, whereby they believe that the elimination of the Palestinians is going to create peace. I've never seen any kind of peace established on an existing injustice. Israel always wants to remind the Palestinians, mainly the Palestinian Authority, that it has the upper hands, that nobody should in any way feel that he or she has the space to maneuver or to operate normally. That we are that's the Israelis saying, we are the ones ruling this country and you have no hand or upper hand and you have no saying in the lives of Palestinians. We are the ones here and we are the ones to rule the sea.
Since 1967, when Israel invaded and occupied Jerusalem, al-Quds, the city has always been one of the main cornerstones of the Palestinian struggle. Today, the city, which is holy to Palestinian Muslims, Christians and Jews, as well as Muslims, Christians and Jews around the world, is at risk of being eliminated and surrendered to a brutal and apartheid entity. However, resistance forces say they will not give up the capital of their country that easily. Thank you for watching this episode of Palestine Files. See you next week.